Welcome to the I Create Daily podcast. I'm Leora Alderson.
And I'm Devani Alderson. We're your co-hosts on this journey of creativity and productivity.
I Create Daily is for artists in every genre of creating, from musicians to writers, crafters to inventors, bloggers to entrepreneurs. I Create Daily is a movement for creators serious about your art.
If you're into creating anything, this podcast is definitely for you. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Hello and welcome to the I Create Daily podcast, a movement for creators serious about their art. I'm Devani.
And I'm Leora. And our guest today is Kieran Charles McKeefery from Sheffield, England, where Kieran is co-founder to the highly popular podcast website's podcast hosting platform, where he likes to keep a watchful eye over the realm of all the systems as Chief Technology Officer. Today, we're excited about not only learning more about Kieran's story, how it is that he's doing this podcast website process company, which is really growing like crazy, but also there's a little bit of a mystery where he, in his story that we will talk about later, where he became famous, his first time to become famous, in other words. So now he's famous as the co-founder of podcast websites, but he had another incident in his life a few years ago that we get to share. But more than that, Kieran is also thinking of starting his own podcast. So he's the tech guy, he's behind the scenes, he helps all kinds of people run and manage and make sure that their podcasts are going smoothly, but he hasn't started his own. So we're going to explore that topic with him a little bit too. So welcome, Kieran.
Thank you for having me. This is lovely, and that was a big tongue twister as well. Podcast platform, player, host. I'm astounded you said that correctly.
Thank you.
Fair play to you.
Stumble, but hey, it's all real, right?
It is.
So maybe we should start with just how did you become the tech operating systems guy behind the podcast platform?
I've been in the industry. I've been a developer since I was about 13. I had an online role-playing game when I was younger. I've come from quite a poor upbringing, so I didn't have much when I was younger. So when I was 13 or 14, I created this little platform for people to play on. And the good thing was that people actually paid money, actual physical money. At the time, I was like, wow, people are actually paying for this game. So that's what got me into developing. I turned it from this little thing that I was doing at school to like a little bit of a job outside of school. My career then tracked a little bit and changed in that I went to be an apprentice at an engineering company, which was a completely different career plan for me. I tried it and it just didn't work, and I ended up quitting and starting my own company. Long story short, I ended up meeting Mark at Hacksaw, his agency that he ran, and he came up with the idea of podcast websites. I joined on with him, becoming the CTO, the technical guy here, and that's where it was. We just started it from fresh. We put a lot of time and effort into it, and now we're pretty successful. We've got quite a lot of members, and you usually see us at the top podcast conferences out and about.
Yeah, definitely highly popular. You're talking about Mark Asquith, who is going to be on I Create Daily in a few weeks. We're going to be interviewing him as well, so we get to get you first. So tell us and our audience a little bit about what you do as a technology officer and how it is that you got started. Like, in other words, do you actually design the sites, develop the sites? What kind of thing do you do as a part of that?
So I initially at podcast websites, I was one of the main point of calls for the support, so the 24/7 technical support that we do offer our members. I was the guy that ran that. Now, as the team has developed and we've got staff that are working across the globe in different time zones, I mainly run that team. I also build the new products, so stuff that you probably won't know that we're building, a lot of stuff that's soon to come, and whatever else we're going to be doing. I'm usually the first point of call for that. I work out what the development schedule is like, plan out how best to use the development team. So as a technology officer, I should know the system, back to front. I know everything that runs. I know everything that's integrated with it. I know what we do, and I know what the team are always working on. So that's kind of how I work, which suits me to a T, really, because it means I get to play around and create the technical stuff that I want to create, as well as doing the business side of things in terms of managing the people to build more stuff.
definitely.
So that's really.
Excuse me 1 second, Devani. No, it just it's a little hard to hear you. If
Oh.
we turn the volume up, we'll pull it closer to. Yeah, we want to make sure we hear.
Perfect. That better?
Yeah, I think that's better.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you get to work, basically you get to manage the team that's creating the content, but you also get to work on sort of the creative aspect of new things you build. Are you what comes more naturally to you, or are you pretty balanced in terms of the right brain, left brain of the operations and the creativity that goes behind the product?
I'm not an arty guy. I can't draw. I can't design anything. I would never say to anyone that I could design. I've always struggled with that. I don't draw. I don't sing. I am pretty basic. I'm just my brain just works well with numbers and code and development. So if you give me a task, say for example, we had to give our accounts to the accountant. So our accounts are very complex because we're a UK business, and lots of our members are in the States. So it's very complex, like all the US dollars and stuff. So for me, I thrive off that. I love that because it means I can build a report. I can build tools to make it easy to give the reports out. So that's where I really, really pull myself into it. Nice. I really, really enjoy it. Whereas, when it comes to drawing and designing, that's where the design team in the office come in. I just completely leave that for them.
That's so interesting. Do you ever notice with whether it's the podcast websites, do you ever notice with podcasters, is there any area of analytics that we as podcasters focus too much on that maybe don't make sense? Or are there any, is there anything technical that podcasters who are more focused on the art of podcasting kind of leave aside that might be important?
One of the analytics that people always concentrate on too much is download numbers. While it's good to improve download numbers, it's the quality of those downloads and those listens that matter the most, not the quantity sometimes. So if you've got quite a lot of people listening and not really taking into it, really digesting into it, then is that, if you're ever looking to monetize in the future, are they the type of people that you're ever going to monetize from? Because they're probably not. So it's usually the good quality people that you want to listen to the shows, like the people that are going to spend and dedicate their time listening to your show on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis. That's probably one of the biggest things that podcasters do look at, which is a shame, but you're bound to do that. That is the biggest analytics in podcasting. So it's the only thing you can really go off.
Yeah. Well, and how can podcasters determine the quality of listeners?
Feedback, Any good podcast will usually have open groups in terms that you speak to your listeners. If you don't speak to your listeners, then it's a different type of show. I mean, you must speak to your listeners quite frequently. You'll have a set amount of people that maybe want to come on the podcast that enjoy it that much that they'll send you an email every single week when you release a new one. That's the type of quality of person that you want listening to your show. The ones that really dedicate the time to it.
Yeah, and what we're talking about when we talk about quality is also relevance, because we want to be relevant to our audience, and we want an audience for whom we are relevant. That where we're bringing them good content and good information. And so that's essentially what we mean by quality, a good match. In other words.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you're in a specific niche as well, you've got to understand that while Joe Blogs, who's doing a podcast about the NFL, might get 500,000 downloads in a month, if you're doing a podcast about a specific niche that not that many people might be interested in, which isn't a problem, but you're not going to get those type of numbers, but you're getting better numbers because they're the people that are actually listening. They want to listen. They're enjoying every single morsel of information that you're going to give to them. Yeah.
When you mentioned, that makes a lot of sense. And backtracking just a little bit, when you mentioned, the things that you love to do, it's so funny because it's many people right now, as we're recording this near the end of February in the US, well, around the world, but in the US, it's also that season where people are really working on their taxes and tax prep. Is it the same in UK? Is April?
April is the end of tax year in the UK, but companies have different end of year. So when your company is incorporated, usually it's 12 months after that when it's due. So ours is in January, which is good. So it's a very busy period. Obviously, we've just got back from Podfest, which was great. If you do get a chance to go to that, I would certainly go to that in Orlando, Florida.
That's right.
Which was good. Yeah, so we're literally there a week and a half ago. It was my only second time as well in the US, which was fun.
Okay, so I'm going to have to ask you to turn your volume up just a little bit more, or your mic a little closer, because we're still soft.
So all right.
How it goes, and then I'll just motion to you if it needs to come closer. Our volume is up all the way on our side, so we want to make sure that when you're through, that everybody can hear you well. So you were in Orlando for that conference, correct?
Yeah, we was indeed.
And did you go to Disney World?
Didn't go to Disney because we went to Disney in Anaheim when we went to Podcast Movement, but we did go to Universal, which was really fun, really fun. Something we did see as well, which is probably the best thing I've ever seen in my entire life, was the SpaceX launch. So the launch last week for the Falcon Heavy, we went to see, and that was by far the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Wow. What made it that way? What made it so special for you?
Knowing that it's the most powerful rocket ever to leave Earth, and then 2 of the 3 boosters then land just over a few miles away from me. I think that would it's just mind-blowing.
Yeah, interesting. Well, back to speaking of mind-blowing and back to the numbers and the taxis and all that, the reason I brought that up is because your comment about how you love that was like music to my ears. And I think that because so many creatives need a person like you in their life, who loves doing that kind of thing. Creatives tend to not like, and by that I shouldn't, it's like we got to work on our language a little bit, because what you do with the numbers to us is very creative too. It's just, like you said, not on the artistic side of creation, but coding and organizing numbers is an incredibly creative process, right? I mean,
it is. It is like, it's not just a case of just going to a screen and typing some numbers of code in. You've literally got to plan just as hard as doing anything else creative. You are still creating something from inception to the end product, and it's still got to be of good quality.
Yeah.
It's a completely creative process, and I do love it. I've loved being a developer since I was younger, and I love now that I can actually concentrate on it as a job. Whereas before, when I was in the apprenticeship and I was working in an engineering firm, which was sales for some reason, which you wouldn't have expected me to work in, now I can actually physically do it and enjoy it every single day.
Yeah, definitely. So we're starting to get sprinklings, actually starting to sprinkle. So if it picks up, we'll pause it and relocate and resume. If it just passes by, we'll just stick it out and hope the electronics hang on. I think we'll
no, it's all right. I don't think I'm going to get rained on in here. So.
No, it's like spotty. It's like just passing. So it's probably not going to stick around. But I'm glad, so here's the thing. It's like, it's so important to bring this up. And that is that I create daily doesn't specifically say I create art daily. I create books daily. So basically it's for anyone who feels that their work and what they do is create something that didn't exist, that organizes something in such a way that creates new order, new structure, new concepts. So like, for instance, I also am not an artist, nor can I sing, but I love to bring people together. I love to meet people, and I love to create and write and create products and businesses. So that's like my area of creativity. Devaney is similarly likes to create solutions for clients in social media. She likes to also write and is an aspiring fiction writer, as well as an aspiring artist, like more like a hobbyist at this time, right?
Excellent.
So the I create really is, and I'm glad that came up, because for anyone
it's more
listening,
about the passion of making things as opposed to what is being made.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Anytime you are leaving work to go home, and you can physically say to yourself how happy you are at what you've achieved in the day, what you've created. It's the same process for a builder. It's the same process for any industry that you physically get something out of it, where you've created something from your bare hands, straight from your mind into paper, onto a computer. There's no better feeling in the world. It's almost euphoric at times. It's it's great.
Yeah,
definitely. That's what it's all about for us. Absolutely. Do you do coding too? Then is that like a part of the systems that you create? It involves coding, right?
Yeah. So all the systems have been built by code. Again, that's my forte. That's how I met Mark. I was a coding developer for his agency to when we started podcast websites, and then obviously it grew to this thing that we did not expect, which is great. It's the best thing ever. When you, like I just said, we've been to 2 conferences in the last 6-7 months.
Yeah.
I flew to the States for twice. Mark's just flown out to San Diego for social media marketing world.
Yeah.
So, it's there's just how much you can bring to it just from these tiny little things.
That's right. And the reason I asked that question specifically about coding, do you know by chance Justin Gilchrist?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, he's a fellow UKer. He's from England, and I'll link his information in the show.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You know about him, but he's a mega successful entrepreneur. He's created a number of different businesses, but one of his passions and that he does for a hobby, like almost like for relaxation, is coding. He says coding, it's like getting into the zone. He just time just disappears, and it's almost like it's like a meditation for him.
Yeah, it does happen. When we first started podcast websites, I was coding. I was coding during the day, the full time job, and I was getting home. I was having some tea or dinner, or what you guys call that, and I would literally be coding till 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I would get back up at 6 the next day and start again, because I enjoyed doing it, and I just knew that to get where you want to, you've always got to put the hours in. You've always got to push for everything you can. If you think you've done enough for something, you've not. You need to put another 10% back into it. You've got to look at it again, spend another hour and just go for it. So for me, I could just code and code and code. I bet I could not sleep for at least 3 days and just develop.
Wow. So that's like, I mean,
like incredibly, I feel like that kind of goes beyond passion and into like life calling type stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, that is what energizes you, the actual art of doing the code, developing something that's going to be an amazing product, or just something amazing that's on the internet and out there. And I was wondering, have you seen, I don't know.
The movie?
I don't know if you're into movies a lot or not.
Yeah.
There's The Man Who Knew Infinity.
I've not seen that now.
Oh,
it's such a beautiful.
You will love it.
I think you'll love it because it really talks about, and it's about math, not necessarily coding, and it's about just this guy's, and I forget the guy's name, but it takes numbers and mathematical equations in life and science, and literally just kind of dispels the myth that math and art are not related. And they're very integral to each other, and I think you would just love it.
It's based on a true story as well, about a young Indian man who came to the UK as a young man to study at university because he was discovered as being extraordinarily brilliant at math and numbers, and how basically he looks at life and the world, and he sees patterns, which again, that's then and
that sounds excellent.
Yeah, I think
I'm definitely going to watch that. I'm definitely going to watch that. Yeah. I can't remember what it is. There is a mathematical equation, isn't there, for those patterns? I can't remember what it is. Is it the circular pattern, or there's some sort of pattern? The Fibonacci. Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah, maths is in everything.
And those are also fundamental to like artists use the golden ratio, the Fibonacci, as a part of creating art. So really, it's just so connected. Even this thing about not being good with numbers or not being good with art, in a way, it's like, well, the black and white keys on the piano, they're still all very integrated. They're just different strokes at different times. So speaking of different strokes at different times, like, you, since as an incredibly creative person, and also a good, successful businessman, entrepreneur, etc. What daily habits do you have that keep you productive?
I would say, I start my day quite early, so I get up at usually about 6:30. I'm usually sat on my desk for about 7:30, 8 o'clock. I get away with all the admin work to begin with, all the monotonous emails. That's usually the bit that catches you in the day. So if you're constantly checking emails for the day, it's always pulling you off tasks. Mm-hmm. So this is something I actually picked up from Mark Asquith, and that's do your admin work at the start of the day and the end of the day. And then you've got a massive block of time in the day that you can just focus on one set task or two set tasks. So that's my daily habit. And it's just getting all the stuff that I don't want to do. I mean, who wants to check their emails? No one wants to check their emails. It's fair that you don't. It's just something that, you might look forward to getting a specific email, but when it comes to, I don't know, I check my emails on the weekend, but I know people that will leave them all weekend. So by the end of the weekend, and it comes to Monday, they might have, 200 emails that they've got to go through. So I just don't like that. So that's what I try to get done as soon as I can, and then I'll just get everything done.
Well, as a member of the podcast website hosting platform, you guys are just excellent with your customer service, and we always hear either from you or from Hannah or
Lester.
Mark. It's like we hear directly and we hear quickly whenever there's an issue. So you guys are just like right on the spot. And I mean, you said you get up early, but a lot of times I see these emails coming in from you late at night as well.
Well, remember,
no, I mean, I'm calculated the time difference.
Oh, wow.
Like right
now.
Yeah.
We work, so for example, so we've got people that work for us across the globe. So that's perfect. So the good thing is there's always someone on support all the way through the day. Literally, it's 24/7 support, which is perfect. Exactly what we say. We always advertise as support times as being within 8 hours, which is good for an industry anyway. Yeah. But it's usually about 3 hours. Yeah. Like sometimes sooner, you get a response within an hour or two. It's weird because when you love something so much, like podcast websites is my baby. Like it's this. You're constantly checking it. So I will still, like I said, I'll do tickets and email in the morning. I'll do all my nice bits of stuff that I want to do. I'll check my emails and tickets at the end of the day. I'll go home, I'll have something to eat. I'll do what I want to do, on a night. And then before I go to bed, I'll also check them just to make sure. So if there's anything that's urgent, anything that's for me, anything that's replied to me in an email that's important, I'll just check. So for me, customer support is like the best thing you can be good at.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you guys do a great job with it, so I'm not surprised.
Good.
One thing, you also enjoy what you're doing, and like you said, when it's your baby.
It does, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and get into a little bit more. Well, first of all, let's hear the story of the second time you became famous. So you're famous as co-owner of the podcast websites business and platform. And there was another time a few years ago where you were in the news, not only in the UK, but also in the US. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so I was sat at work. This is when I worked at Mark's agency. And I was sat at the work and I was just checking your bank account, like you usually do. You just do your little checks to make sure that everything's there and nothing's missing. And I looked in my savings account and I had to double check because in the savings account was £1.25 million, which I didn't expect to be in that. So I double checked. I logged in and out to make sure it wasn't something on my computer or someone were playing around me and took a screenshot of it. I was in complete shock. So I was like, oh no, what's happened? I pulled everyone around to the screen and they're saying, oh no, you're lying. I proved it to them. I showed it. So the first thing I did was ring the bank to get it out of my account as quick as possible. I just did not want it there.
Like right away, that was like the first thing you did is to call the bank and say, look,
Straight away. When you're talking such a massive amount of money like that, we're all legit people. We're all, we won't do anything wrong. We won't do anything illegal. But right. When you've got £1.25 million in your bank account, and
randomly,
you could just literally just go out and buy what you want. You could go out and just have so much fun. So I wanted it away from me as quick as possible. And I was scared because you see the stories in the news of people that get transferred money and they spend it thinking it's theirs, and then they get put to prison. So for me, I just wanted it gone.
Yeah, and it was funny, the story, and we'll link to the story in the Huffington Post that I read, where it's like you called the bank. And they were like, well, it's not, essentially, paraphrase, it's not really our problem. That belongs to the company that deposited it, right?
Yeah, it was exactly that. All the bank said to me was, well, that's all right then. they'll have to ask for it back. I'm like, can you not contact them and ask them to ask for it back? Because I don't want it. It was weird. Like I must have rang the bank 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
For them to even do anything. I had to fill a form out. It was basically just a case of, they did say to me, of course, it's not your money. So if it's not your money, don't spend it because they will get it back. But it was a case of, well, it'll be back whenever it's back. I think it took over a month. I can't remember exactly.
Wow.
But I did make a bit of interest from it. Not very much. Like you would expect a bit more interest on £1.25 million than I think it was about £100 or £200 interest, which isn't very much. if you think about it.
Time. So, and given
yeah, exactly. Yeah. All the phone calls and stuff, it paid for that.
Yeah.
I think the worst thing about it was actually mentioning it to the news, because I don't know if you've ever released anything to press or anything like that. So someone contacted me about it, and they were like, we'll give you some money if we can write a story about it. So I'm like, okay, that's fine, don't worry about it. I think I got paid £200 for it, so it ended up being £400 in total for the story and then the interest, which wasn't bad really for just having some money sat on my account. The problem I had with that is it got shared amongst lots of different news sites, to a point when it was on something in the UK which is called Lad Bible, and it's basically a bit like a college news thing. So it's like a Facebook viral type news site, to which people was giving me death threats for giving the money back and not spending it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
People, well, just
college
kids. College kids. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, well, it's a good thing it happened to you, because like you said, you were honest and you wanted to stay that way. And if you had spent it anyway, been tempted because you were getting ready to buy a car, you could have
exactly
outright. So if you had, then it would have come back to haunt you anyway. So the honesty is always the best policy.
It always is. It always is. Even if you get death threats, it's always worth it.
Absolutely. Definitely. So let's shift to the concept of what kind of podcast you're going to do. So I read a note that you wrote in the podcast website membership forum a couple weeks ago, and it says that you're also a comic geek. You like football or soccer, of course, as it's called in the UK, and golf, and you're quite a tech guy. So since you wrote that, have you had any other thoughts about what kind of podcast you might want to do?
It's weird because I'd like to do a podcast, but I think people would get bored of my voice. So it's weird, really. Me and Mark have discussed maybe doing a comic-based podcast. So I'm fairly new into comics. So I've only started reading comics within the last 3 or 4 years, whereas Mark's read them since he was a lot younger. So for me, like some of the storylines, some of the stuff in that I'm reading. So I'm reading quite a few years back's worth of comics. So we didn't know whether the idea of maybe a podcast where it's someone who is, reads comics quite frequently, and knows that a lot of the history, and then someone who's new, and like the clash of how the storylines and my opinion on it compared to his opinion as he knows the future stuff. That was one of the ideas. Another was going to be about development. I don't know, because I wouldn't listen to a development podcast. So I don't know if anyone else would.
Right.
So I don't know. I could go sports-based, but again, there's so many sports-based podcasts.
Right.
I need something that's just niche for me.
Right. Well, so of the things that you guys talked about, did any of those pique your interest, like sound interesting and exciting, like something you would really want to dedicate the time that is required to create, to start, run, and sustain as podcast?
I like helping people, so it's whether I do something along those lines, but what do I help them with? Being a developer, I can only help them with the website, really, or just my ideas of how their website should look, how it should run, any improvements they can make. But then again, that's covered with podcast website support, so it's a weird one. Nothing's piqued my interest yet. I think I'm just waiting for the right moment and thing to come for me that will give me the push to create something.
Not liking your voice or something, I think a lot of people kind of do that, whether you're thinking about like vlogging or podcasting. I know I did that for a while, and I don't I think it's pretty common not to completely be into your own voice. I think that's healthy for sure. I think everybody struggles with that to some degree, whether it's I'm uncomfortable being on camera, I'm uncomfortable being on audio, I'm uncomfortable posting a photo of my painting. Like there's every variation of being uncomfortable with whatever you produce. So I think that just kind of, like, as somebody who wasn't totally into wanting to be a podcaster or do the video filming side of it either, I think it just comes through practice, and then you just kind of get natural, and then it's just sort of like you show up for coding every day. It's like, oh, I have a podcast to do this week or next week or whatever. Yeah. It just kind of works itself out.
Yeah, I didn't mean that I don't like, well, who does like you just said, who does like your sounding voice, but I mean, like, I don't think if anyone would be interested to me just sat in a dark room just talking about I'm a developer. This is what I do.
Definitely not like
I can
that.
do this.
And it doesn't have to be a dark room. Yeah,
it's got to be really. I want something that thrills me. I want something that's, do I want to go like interview based? I want to go something just me sat there reviewing something. I've been on a few podcasts that have been reviews of like comic shows, films, that type of stuff. Because I like I said, I'm into comic books. I'm into comic book films and TV shows. So I've been on that type of stuff. I used to like gaming, but I haven't got time for it now. So it's just something that really wants. I don't know. I like the buzz of going to work in the morning knowing I'm going to create something. So I want that same buzz when I create a podcast. I want something that I'm like, I can't wait to get on time just to record that episode. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
So just find out a little bit that'll strike it for me.
So you talked about how you like to help people, and if you were to do like what website help, then that would be like support. But do you know whether there is currently a podcast that helps people with their websites?
There probably is, because there's a podcast and everything. I found that out quite recently. There's literally a podcast for everything. So there probably will be.
But check it out.
Yeah, I will check it out. My idea is I'm gonna plan what my ideas are on a piece of paper, and then just work out pros and cons of doing each one. Yeah. And then just determine which one's probably more suited to me. Yeah. That might work.
Logical process that makes a lot of sense for a mathematical mind. But just to explore it a little further, so I don't know if you guys have this in UK, but in the US they have some like radio, just what started as radio talk shows, where something like the Car Guys. Have you heard of the Car Guys? And
no.
I'm sure they have podcasts that are like that as well. They've probably migrated their podcast to a podcast platform as well as others. And that is like, in that case, it's two guys, they may even be brothers, who banter and talk and joke about people call in, to ask questions about problems with their car. And they kind of like make it all fun, talk about comics, you could kind of weave in, they talk about the different noises, and they make fun of the noises. They just make it a fun, lively kind of show relative to the kind of problems that people call in about. And sometimes they poke fun at the people they're calling in, all in a jovial,
Yeah, that sounds great. Like that's a more conversational podcast, that would probably suit me a bit more. Because I do like that, just sat around a room, just talking to people, enjoying it. Yeah. One of my close friends has just launched a new podcast about beer, so I might be able to get in on that and get interviewed. Craft beer is a bit of a thing that's just hitting the UK. It's probably a bit bigger in America, but craft beer is in at the minute. So he's doing a podcast about that. Again, I like football, so I could sit on a Sheffield Wednesday, which is my football team. Sit on a podcast about that. Just sit with a few guys, just talking about football in general.
Absolutely. It's like, like when you watch the games, like you said, sit on the sidelines. So this is in your hometown, right? And you're watching it live?
Yep.
So, but do you also go like on weekends or whatever to the pub or to your house and watch it with buddies, like on not the local team, but like the national teams?
Yeah. So I've got a season ticket at Sheffield Wednesday. So I go to all the home games. I go to quite a few of the away games as well. Probably not as many soon, because I'm getting married soon, so I don't think my soon-to-be wife will be happy with me going to so many away games. Because usually it's up and down the country. It's just usually just fun. You get to go to a new location. So talking about that would be great. Just sat down, having a beer in a nice light environment. That would definitely be a good idea.
Yeah, so it sounds like, maybe in the beginning, so a couple of thoughts come to mind. This is one of the things that Devani and I do as a part of the work that we love to do, and that is to help people hone in on, what they're passionate about and figure out what to do, which part to do. And so probably for you, two parallel thoughts come to mind. One is to continue getting onto as many podcasts as a guest as you can, and then discover in that what kind of things, what kind of topics your hosts end up wanting to talk about that they think will also serve their audience. Find out from there what kind of things that the people on the podcast respond most to with you. So that would be one way to see like what kind of things, and then of those, what kind of things did you most enjoy talking about?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
So like that's one track, and then the other could be like you could be your own brand. So like it is, for now, it is the Kieran McKeefery podcast. And today we are covering the Sheffield game, and now we're sitting in a podcast website office talking about support, like how to build a website or whatever it may be. It's like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to zero in on the thing. You can just explore, and make it a collection for now.
I like that. It sounds a really good idea. That I do like that we could just vary the topic each and every week. That would be good.
This is you. This is my life, and then you find out which gets the most downloads and that sort of thing. Not, back to downloads. Obviously, the quality, the relevant.
Yeah, and I was just listening to Tim Ferriss had an episode on podcasting that you might want to tune into that we can link below, and he was talking about like the biggest thing you want to do, whatever kind of content you're producing, is make sure it's first and foremost of interest to you. And so if you and the beauty of being a personal brand, like your own brand, like Kieran, as the main topic, is that any given day, whatever is of interest to you is what you're going to talk about. So you could just rotate around your comic topics, your football topic, your golf interest, your tech background, your development. And some days you might feel like bantering with somebody else about a topic. Some days it might just be you talking about something. Some days it might be shorter. Some days it might be longer. I think the most intriguing aspect of podcasting is that it's very much like having your own radio show, and people are willing to try out and sample out different things that you experiment with in audio, different lengths of shows, different topics of shows. Like we have a coffee break episode that are generally like 20-minute episodes, and it's just Leora and I generally talking about some topic of interest
that has come to mind for us, things that have come up, conversations that we typically have, that we enjoy, that we then share with the audience. So it's like if you're hanging out with your friends, watching the game, not everybody can be there having that conversation with you, and so it's like, how do we, and I don't know if this is right, but I have a sense that you might be typically more introverted, but that there's an inner extrovert waiting to come out.
I do talk a lot. I'm known for talking and not shutting up. That is a common problem. Whenever I go out on a double date with my partner and any of her friends, it's usually when I get home. You could have probably not spoke as much in that entire meal because they didn't get a word in. So sometimes I probably talk a bit too much. Sometimes I don't talk at all because I just can't be bothered. So it's just how I'm feeling at the time. But I like the idea of that. Maybe a day in the life of a Yorkshireman. So that's
So you already have that. You already like to talk, and you're already extrovert. So that just kind of makes sense.
And on the days you don't like to talk, you don't have to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. That is perfect.
Yeah. Notice. Yeah. So I would just think that it sounds like most of those things that you discussed, were interesting, and it will be really interesting to see how you what you'd create from the things that you're interested in.
Yeah.
And it's like one of the things that we've discovered, like for instance, last year at the end of the year, Devani and I ended up creating and producing a 90-day goals journal. Started it in October, started in November, finished it November, December, and now it's published and we're selling it. We've created 3 more. And as of September, we did not have that concept even in our mind, but our community, our Facebook group, and our paid challenge group members wanted something like that. So we said, well, okay, so we'll just create it then. We'll just use this and we'll have it used for our group. And then as we got it going, it's like, well, actually, it's a bigger thing than just using it for our group. So we'll go ahead and print these, publish them, and sell them. And now it's ended up being a big part of our brand. And we didn't even know that was going to happen. Yeah. So really,
it's excellent. That's really, really good.
It's in the journey that the way becomes more clear. So you get in the journey of podcasting, and then the exact avenue that you take will become more clear.
And your
sorry,
your audience will grow with you, and it'll just continue to enjoy and evolve into whatever you decide to talk about.
Yeah, I've got loads of interesting facts. Like Sean Bean, the guy from Game of Thrones, is from my town, so that must be something for people to talk about. Hopefully.
Yeah.
And if you've not seen Game of Thrones, I apologise for spoiling anything. It's just anything really. I mean, my goal as well is to get on a few more interviews, just get out there a bit more. I speak to people daily, so I'm not too worried about speaking to people. It's not a confidence issue. It's speaking about something that's relevant and not the same subject all the time. Yeah. So, for example, like I don't want to go on another interview and it just be the same story about me. If you know what I mean. It's trying to find different angles to pitch myself at, and just get better at speaking as a whole. Like my aim is to by the end of the year possibly speak at one of the conferences, like Mark does. Follow those footsteps a little bit. So it's just building that confidence up in certain aspects and learning how to speak to people, just you know how it is, just to work a bit better on stuff.
Definitely. Absolutely. And so one of the best things you could do along those lines is, as you're having thoughts and as you're doing things, go ahead and record a session. Because like Gary Vaynerchuk talks about, he uses the term "don't create, document," and we kind of do both. It's like we create and we try and document it, like by recording it. And so that is like, as thoughts come up, as you're having conversations about the various things or thoughts, go ahead and record it, even if it's like a 1-minute clip, a 30-second clip, a 10 minutes. If you just, you might decide that, hey, I'm having this thought about, I'm reading these comics, I'm having these thoughts about this conversation that I would have. I'm going to go ahead and put that in a snippet, and what's happening is you're developing, you're practicing speaking, you're practicing, hearing, speaking on camera as well, or on audio, as well as having a chance to kind of free flow, get the stuff out of your head and into, out into the air kind of thing.
Just like a brain splat onto to wherever I've got. Yeah, that sounds perfect.
And
that's a good idea.
So along those lines, you're talking to your aspiration is not to possibly speak, but to definitely speak, on stage by the end of the year at different podcast websites. And so along those lines, it's when you're talking to people, like in conversations, like with your fiance, et cetera, as well as work, begin to kind of use that concept in mind. What if I were speaking on stage, or what if, I was on a podcast? How would I be doing anything differently? And so in other words, every conversation is an opportunity to practice.
Yeah, that's I'm definitely going to use that now. Okay. That's perfect. I've got a speech coming up, but that's the wedding speech. Like I've mentioned, that's only next month. So I do speak for long, so I think I'll just keep it to a short 50-minute speech. So that should be enough. Yeah,
definitely. And you'll have some time to practice. When are you getting married?
Good Friday. Did you know Good Friday is in America? I'm not sure. Yeah, so Good Friday, the 30th of March.
Gosh, that's just like next month.
Yeah, it literally is next month. Yeah, it's.
All right.
I'm looking forward to it.
On that.
Thank you.
And we're glad that we got to have this chance to speak with you and explore with you. Thanks for being willing to do that and just to join us here on I Create Daily. Do you have any other parting thoughts that you would like to share to an audience about the concept of creating daily and putting your work in the world?
Just put the time into it. Everyone's going to say this to you anyway. Some people might say, don't put the time into it, just put what you can. But for me, it's just literally put every tiny bit of stuff every tiny bit of time you've got, just stick it in, because it will always, even if the money doesn't come in at the end of it, maybe if you've created a business and you've put all this time into it and it doesn't pay off, the business links that you've got from it, the networking, all the information, the knowledge that you've got is worth every single penny of time that you've put into it. So just stick to concentrating on just putting all your time and your effort into it, even if it's like the last thing that you're going to do.
That's great advice. That's what we do, and we wholeheartedly agree with that. Yep. Yeah. Did you have anything else, Delaney?
No.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's a great note to end on. So thanks so much for joining us for I Create Daily, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for joining us for the I Create Daily podcast. Please let us know what creatives you would like us to interview and what topics you would be interested in hearing more about.
And if you enjoyed this show, please leave a review on iTunes. We value your feedback. We read all the reviews, and it just helps us get the word out on the I Create Daily podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.